So Mike, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us today. Many of you may already know Mike Petrone, who is a risk management consultant and business protection risk management for CUNA Mutual Group. Mike assists credit unions in identifying areas of risk in their operations and recommends appropriate controls to reduce loss exposure. So thank you so much for joining us today, Mike, and I am looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Christine. Can you see my screen? Is everybody seeing my screen properly?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, it's been I just want to say thank you for inviting me. This is a very timely, topic, for what we've, have experienced. So I just want to, again, thank everybody in the audience and also make you all aware that I am available. I am available to work with your credit union individually. If you have the CUNA Mutual bond, part of risk management is all value added service. So please, here's my contact information. If anybody would like to reach out to me after the fact and have any risk management type reviews, done, I'll be more than happy to do that. I was letting the group know I do a lot of robbery training. I'm a certified active shooter trainer as well, instructor. So again, this is all value added service. So please, reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help you in any way. In the past 13 months, the concept of traditional enterprise risk management based on behaviors, historical models, and trends analysis were essentially proven to be at best ineffective, and at worst almost unserviceable by themselves. For credit unions to be successful and adapt to change in an agile manner, they now require a new model and methodology where management for resiliency is necessary. The resilience of an enterprise is the concept of how the organization, in your case, the credit union, will deal with the disturbance or incident and reframe its current thinking about how it must respond to remain not only viable, but successful. Basically preparing your credit union to absorb some sort of stressor and not only recover critical functionality, but thrive in your new altered circumstances. This need, while growing prior to last year, was massively accelerated by the impact of events we all experienced in the past 14 months. And we're all living those events, still. There's still a lot of credit unions, that are still not, open, to the public as of yet, and they're still working with the effects of COVID. So it's an ongoing thing, what we're seeing, taking place, certainly right now. So how did we get here? What's the impetus for change? 2020 has changed our perception of in response to risk. As an industry, we've been faced with multiple high impact, low probability events. Nobody saw, COVID, coming down the pike. We've always talked about natural disasters and severe weather. We have cyber crimes and other, technology issues, political instabilities and social unrest. Those are all things that when we looked at credit unions, disaster recovery or business continuity policy. In most cases, we never saw anything with political instability or social unrest, and that became really prevalent in this past year. Then obviously the pandemic and other, health concerns. Some of these were ranked, very low on your risk registry or placed in outer quadrants of your heat maps. And by using traditional risk management methodologies meant they were disregarded as being too remote in terms of probability and not worthy of time and resources to properly mitigate. We always talk about, prepare for the, worst case scenario. But again, I don't think anybody could have prepared for what we ran across with COVID. Well, now we have experienced a global event that has affected organizations in a multitude of ways, disrupting supply chains, displacing workers from the workplace, disabling the workforce in terms of physical and mental health implications, and straining access to proper technology and information systems. Now, in the world where the threats are endless, but the resources to prevent them are not, only the most resilient credit unions will thrive during uncertain times. And again, one of the biggest issues that we had experienced with COVID is nobody anticipated all the employees being out for as long a time as they were. They didn't have the resources, they didn't have the computers to be sent home, with the staff, to work remotely. So there's a lot of lessons, to be learned, for that. Over the years, we have witnessed the evolution and convergence of risk management to include crisis and event management, incident response, disaster recovery, and business continuity. I know that a lot of credit unions, when they look at what business continuity is and disaster recovery, they are different. Given the unpredictable nature and speed of onset from some of these modern risks we just discussed, with their frequency, unknown origin, unpredictable scales, and terms of potential disruption, some of the more traditional approaches to risk management may be redundant. These siloed disciplines that have served so well in the past may no longer be adequate address the needs of our credit union to help us deliver our commitments. We should be leaning towards integrating these individual disciplines to become more efficient and effective while better supporting the sustainability and strategic initiative, of the credit union. So more than ever, risk management should be involved. And then again, you'll have the disaster recovery plan, business continuity, and more than ever, the business resiliency. Many credit union leaders have expressed their intentions to build their organizations more resiliently, but not many know how to do so. 2020 has certainly presented us with a challenge to transform how reliable we operate, and we must conceive new strategies based on flexibility and agility. This will require new thinking about how to prevent, monitor, respond to, and recover from disruptive events, and how we continue operations that produce desired outcomes during these disruptive events. The long-term results will be dynamic and resilient credit unions with cultures of durability capable of delivering to their members and honoring their commitments no matter what will not only survive but thrive in these times of crisis. Credit unions have been mainly focused on creating and exceeding stable or even static plans, and those work well when relationships, are clear and predictable and unchanging. Resilience deals with what is unknown, can change, not only unpredictable, but often improbable, and has significant consequences. Managing for resiliency requires more than just embedding new ideas or technological tools into the approach of today. It requires a fundamentally different mental model, one that embraces complexity, uncertainty, and interdependence from multi-timescale perspective. Taking a resiliency-based approach doesn't mean we're going to try to identify every possible threat. Instead, it forces us to allocate resources to design and protect our operation in such a way to be able to bounce back quickly from disruptions and minimize the effects as much as possible. How do you become more resilient company? Crises are opportunities for change. We shouldn't endeavor to mitigate risk or damage to restore what was. Rather, we should be aiming to create advantage through the adversity by effectively adjusting to the new realities we've just been faced with. With COVID-19 and other events of the past year, credit unions have a unique opportunity and necessity to revisit their business models to build greater systemic resiliency, and starts with the following. Establishing a core vision. Establishing a core vision and translating a well-communicated strategy to your team is crucial. Everyone in the credit union needs to understand the core vision and be accountable for delivering on the identified strategic objectives. Building a vision for your resiliency begins with the recognition and understanding of many vulnerabilities the credit union faces and the analysis of the potential impact of these vulnerabilities on the business. This should be tailored to your credit union specific business objectives, priorities, existing infrastructure, people, assets, and current and future state of business models. Then you have operations. For your credit union to be resilient to change, operational resiliency must be established. This focus can't only be vision and theory, we need application. Your people, processes, and systems must be able to effectively react to sudden disruptions and changes that occur. Operational resiliency may be strengthened by identifying the potential events that could affect your business and grading those risks according to the impact they would have, and then implementing a strategy to mitigate and manage the risks. Consistently reviewing the way in which your operations work to assess whether it's up to date will help ensure resiliency is established. Then finally, you have the people. Your employees and their skills are critical to the resiliency of the credit union. Investing in the workforce is always the best and first step. Skill levels, employee turnover, job satisfaction, training, and learning opportunities should be carefully monitored. Providing people with the tools and skills required to accept to change will contribute to improved resiliency. Ensuring that people are engaged with the program of change and keeping them motivated will reap dividends for any organization. It's really important to get the buy-in, with your staff, and getting everybody involved is really the key. And you want to definitely have it from cross-functional teams, and you always want to make sure that you have, different, people covering for different people. And a lot of credit unions, what they'll do is they'll do the job training where they'll have employees will go from one department to another department. This way you can cross train. So in case something were to come down the pike and you had key people out, you would have the appropriate people to step in accordingly. In order to foster a culture of resiliency, we need to look forward in the short run. A crisis may appear tactical and operational, but on a longer upscale, we need the impact disruption may have on competitors. Can create opportunities for us. Organizations with resilient cultures tend to have strong, transparent, and highly visible leadership who engage and empower employees, which builds strong brand trust, both internally and externally. Resilient cultures also have a clearly articulated core of ethics where employees consistently understand what the right thing is to do. Developing resilient team members is also imperative. A key component to this concept of diversity, employing people from different backgrounds and with different thought processes creates an environment that fosters multiple ways by thinking and doing things. Diversity of responses to a disruptive event further helps to ensure the systems do not fail catastrophically. Revisiting your strategic plan with lessons learned from COVID-19 and other disruptors will help strengthen the resilience and agility of your business. Strategic planning allows you to review all your credit union activities and functions and to take an in-depth look at the market potential, competition, as well as corporate missions and objectives. This should include reevaluating your members' needs and your competitive positioning. How have demand for your products or services been affected by recent crisis? This disruption could have long-term impact. Consider asking yourself, what has changed in the market? What are the new needs of my current and potential members? Is what we are offering still relevant? Are my competitive advantages still relevant? An example, if a big part of your value was location, is this still a case with digital channels becoming more prevalent? So how do we identify and assess potential disruptors to a credit union's resiliency? Workforce resiliency. These people who work within the credit union is most important asset. So protecting their individual well-being will drive its overall resiliency. Staff turnover rates, hiring ability, and reputation are all positively influenced by this. Good people management is also a key indicator of the workforce resiliency in the way that develops and manages talent. It's important to anticipate any future changes by identifying any potential skill gaps, as well as carefully monitoring levels of employee engagement. Social and environmental resiliency. This hinges on the measures a credit union takes to ensure it has positive impact on the communities and environments in which it operates. For instance, following ethical business practices, promoting concepts like environmental sustainability puts a credit union in position to meet the demands of members and employees who are increasingly aware of these considerations. Operational resiliency. This is a probability that the most familiar factors is that the need to implement procedures and contingencies planning to protect against unexpected events like the effects of extreme weather and the physical risks such as damage caused by fire, the active threats of violence, or cyber attacks. Finally, management and effectiveness of these resiliency components through proper testing and adjustments. It's importance of testing. And I'm not sure how many of you out there, how often you do testing of the of your disaster recovery or business continuity plan. This really is an ongoing process. So it's not just do it once a year. Another thing that we've credit unions have been asking is how to develop a plan. Have you developed a plan internally within your credit union, or have you outsourced, that you'll hire a company to come and write a plan for you? And some of the plans that I review are extremely, comprehensive. And the biggest thing with a disaster recovery plan is that you customize it for your credit union. So if you do go outside and have a company develop this plan, you really want to customize it. You just don't want to put your name name on it. And you also want to make sure it's not that it's dust proof. And when I go into some credit unions, I'll ask, do you have a disaster recovery plan, a business continuity plan? They said, yes, we do. And it's this big, thick binder, and it's just sitting on a desk. And there's dust that's formed on it, so they don't do anything with it. So it's great to have a detailed plan, but you also want to make sure that you look at it and make changes and customize it to your credit union. So emerging risks. The whole point of conducting a test is to ensure your response plan fits your credit union's needs and limit the impact of disruption to critical business functions and processes. Discovering response plans are ineffective during a disaster or crisis is everybody's worst nightmare. That's why testing your plan on a regular basis is critical to your organization's resiliency. Rigorous testing is the only way to uncover and fix issues in your plan. There's 3 resilience stages: anticipation, coping, and adaptation. It helps to identify gaps and areas for improvement in your controls, demonstrates a higher degree of commitment to your team members and partnership. Continually validate and improve plans, satisfy compliance requirements and regulations. It reduces recovery time and cost during an event by promoting improved communication between effective business areas. This means that in addition to continuity of service and operations, we are also treating resiliency simply as an outcome. We're judging how credit unions perform well during crisis or bounce back from interruptions by anticipating, coping, and adaptation. A few key components in terms of resiliency we should be monitoring for is your ability to identify and assess risks to your operations, your ability to locate people and assets that might be in harm's way, your ability to act or execute standard operation procedures and protocol in a stress-induced environment, your ability to analyze performance before, during, and after a critical event. Look for signs of distress that are detriment. Some of the signs of distress include increase in rumors and gossiping, silence in meetings, abrupt or confusing communications among team members, passive-aggressive behaviors or bullying, resistance to dealing directly with conflict, exaggerated sarcasm, and finally, direct involvement of senior executives help to mature your plans and ultimately improve your resiliency by uniting various departments and locations for a common purpose and identify interdependencies and points of failure. Testing is an important part of operational resiliency and can take many shapes and forms. There's also other outside companies out there as far as, notification of employees, to be able to, send as a software like on a phone that you're able to send a text message, to that everybody will be involved. It'll be like a mass text. This will be an important to try to communicate, with your staff. So if you're looking for different software programs out there or companies that might help with this, feel free to reach out to me. But I deal with a lot of third-party vendors and try to see what the latest and greatest technology that is out there. So definitely there is some good stuff that's there. In order to fully test or stress your resiliency, you should be trying multiple types of testing plans at your organization. The plan review. This test is normally a high-level overview that involves a team led by executive level management to ensure that the proper business functions are recovered, responsibilities are assigned and are unchanged, and to discuss potential improvements or changes in the written documents. So the first thing you want to do is, again, review the plan and make sure that it's going to be a workable plan, and make sure that everything is always updated there. If you have, CUNA Mutual employees that are listed to contact, make sure those people are, still with CUNA Mutual Group. All the numbers are still good. If you have other third-party vendors, you make sure that you update all your third-party vendors in a timely manner. You have tabletop exercises, structured walkthrough tests. This test will include critical personnel that are involved in the plan. It's more of a discussion based on scenarios that would cause different plans to be activated. Each team will provide responses to scenarios and walk through the procedures with their team will follow during the event disruption. Then you have a walkthrough drill simulation test. This test will be more of an active event recovery functions such to restore backups, verification that redundancy systems and operating are expected. This test will include a wider range of personnel that includes the role of in the BCP, as well as include actual notification of team members and staff in accordance with the plan. A functional or recovery test. This test should be as close to real life disaster as possible. This test will run in parallel to the primary system as a failover where you shift operations to the backup environment. Think about this as sort of a spectrum, with document review being the least intensive and the full functional recovery test being the most intense. All of these tests serve certain purposes and all bring value when conducted properly. Now, most credit unions have a great deal of experience with the two bookends of the spectrum, document review and full recovery testing. But there's a lot more that you can do, in between with this testing. And testing is absolutely, critical to make sure that your plan is effective. Let's review the fundamental steps in holding a productive tabletop exercises. The first and often misstep is a process should always be to hold a pre-planning meeting. It may seem excessive, but this is where we secure funding for the event, gain executive approval, identify key objectives for the exercise. We should also be reviewing those business impact analysis to better understand our essential function, mission, critical processes. We should stay mindful of these as we progress through the planning process. Once we have the approval to move forward and we've determined some of the key objectives for the test, we can then begin building out the preliminary documents. This includes the pieces like exercise plan, the facilitator's guide or handbook, situations or scenario handouts, proper locations to gather the right number of individuals, as well as any accompanying presentation decks or materials you would use to facilitate the exercise. This can be anywhere from a 3 to 6 month process to build out the exercise, conduct, evaluate, and prepare for an improvement plan. So again, there's a lot of pre-work that goes in to this, but in order to be the most effective, you have to do the pre-work concerning that. So planning. By first identifying objectives to your exercise, you'll be able to design your exercise and its stimulated chaos in a way that works towards achieving these objectives. Say your response team has never had a chance to convene before the exercise. Testing how well they collaborate and how the decision-making process functions will be one of your objectives. You can then begin thinking about an exercise crisis scenario, which emphasizes a series of challenges, forcing your response team to make difficult, consequential decisions. You could, for example, inject development into the scenario that requires a crisis team to quickly modify its messaging both to external and internal stakeholders. If you are testing a pandemic plan, think about injecting a new, more contagious or aggressive variant. So specific objectives may help you define the scenario, ensure that participants share an understanding of what to accomplish, provide a way to organize the modules, and form a basis, the after action report. So again, planning is always, the more you can plan on the front end, the better off you're going to be. Most credit unions include 4 roles within the group of participants for a tabletop. You have the players. The players are the personnel who have an active role in discussing or performing their regular roles and responsibilities during the exercise. Players discuss or initiate actions in response to the simulated emergencies. So then you have the observers. The observers do not directly participate in the exercise. However, they may support the development of players' responses to the situation during the discussions by asking relevant questions or providing subject matter expertise. Then you have the facilitators. The facilitators provide situation updates and moderate discussions. There are also additional information to resolve questions as required. Key exercise planning teams members also may assist with facilitation of the subject matter experts during the exercise. Then you have the evaluators. Evaluators are assigned to observe and document certain objectives during the exercise. Their primary role is to document players' discussion, including how and those discussions conform to plans, policies, and procedures. While several objectives in hand as a guide to scenario development, you'll next want to turn your attention to who precisely from your organization is participating in the exercise. Do you have a formal roster of crisis team along with each individual's backups? Consider removing key decision makers early on. Will your scenario entail participants who will be external to your organization, such as first responders? That could mean that representative from those external groups should be invited to participate in the exercise. If there is an actual crisis, you would undoubtedly need to work seamlessly with outside organizations. So exercising with them is a smart move. And you always want to make sure you, as I mentioned earlier, that you do cross-train individuals, because when you do this testing, you may not be able to have some of these key people that are in these meetings. So if you are missing a person who's leading your plastic card area, and that person is not available because of something that happened during the disaster, you want to be able to have somebody else fill that role. So it's really important that you definitely cross-train your employees. So I want to shift gears just a bit, because this is another question we get from credit unions a lot. What disruptors do we anticipate in testing to understand your resiliency? It's easy to get caught up on focusing on tech issues like cyber events and outages on weather events. But we've learned that that's a little short-sighted. Just like we should include varieties and types of tests that we use, it's very important to also mix up the scenarios. Keep in mind, we want scenarios to be realistic, but we also need them to be complex enough to stretch our imagination and challenge assumptions we may carry about the effectiveness of our existing controls and response procedures. Every test needs to link threats resulting in one or several plausible major incident responses and impacts, anticipate and understand new threats through market watch, and leverage audit reports and risk assessments when building and review of the program. Here are some just, some of the things that, should be addressed in your disaster recovery plan. IT, telecommunication outages. What happens if this happens? You have a cyber attack or data breach. And again, you should have step-by-step procedures to take if in fact you were involved with that. Adverse weather, national disasters. I know our company, what we do is if we see a disaster coming into a certain area, I know our company will reach out to credit unions in advance when we're constantly monitoring the weather and we're seeing what's going to take place. So oftentimes our company might contact the credit union before the credit union contacts, us with an issue. Health and safety incidents. Talent shortage. This has been a huge thing. Many credit unions are experiencing talent shortages right now. So even if they do go back to work, they're down so many different employees. So how are you going to address a talent shortage? And a lot of credit unions, what they're doing is they're looking to have more ATMs, more ITMs. They might have credit unions using more drive-through. So talent shortages definitely should be looked at. And what are your plans to hire new people? What are your plans to keep retain the employees that you have? It's not as simple anymore as just paying more money, because the salaries are increasing everywhere. So it's not as simple as let me just pay more money, I'll keep my talent. You got to be really creative in what you do to keep people. Political instability is a thing. What did you do when we had all these, when we had the rioting, if you will, out there? Were you prepared? We always would just say, what, it's not worth, trying to, protect your building. We want safety, safety first. So again, you should have a plan in place. If there are any issues with large gathering of people, how can you protect yourselves? Number one. Critical infrastructure, supply chains, regulatory changes, reputation of an incident. So there's a lot of different things that you want to address in your disaster recovery business continuity plan. Don't underestimate the importance of having a clearly defined and actionable playbook to guide the testing process. So you want to develop actionable playbook and guide and testing. You want to set clear expectations and define success criteria. Prepare a draft test plan, detailed information about the test, secure management approval, support, and funding of the test. Schedule time and environment that will be tested and verified of the testing time. Document what happens during the test, what worked and what didn't. That's one of the biggest things you want to do is after you do the testing is document and lessons learned. Have a debriefing, ask employees for their feedback, what went well, what didn't go well. And then again, build variety into, the test plans. Any good tabletop exercise will expose information that needs to be accessible to credit union leadership. Be sure that strategic gaps, missing information, outdated information, business processes are streamlined to be performed more efficiently or effectively. The moment the exercise is complete is the moment to start addressing these issues. If there are leftover issues, you'll be addressing them next year. This will leave your participants wondering, what's the point of it all? A superficial action plan at this point is to ensure that the plan gets updated and address specific strategic issues. Assigning someone who has good observation, note-taking, and writing skills to complete a report before the exercise begins will be function as an observer, be willing to take the time to compile a good report based on who will read it, how the information will be used, and what actions will be taken. The 4 reports include an after action report, which has general observation and recommendations, a corrective action report, which addresses areas of assessment gaps and corrective actions to remedy the gaps, an improvement plan matrix, which has goals, action steps, and benchmarks, a work plan, which covers specific actions, timelines, responsible departments,
back to work, lady friend,
or individuals, tracking methods, or monitoring steps.
Excuse me, soldier.
Finally, we can prevent change or disruption, so why not embrace it? Learn from it, capitalize on it. We must be able to steer and adjust. When the pace of change is slow and manageable, involve relatively minor fluctuations, creators can use orderly, well-defined business processes that operate precisely and efficiently. The concept of continuous improvement based on plan to do, check, act, or cycle enables periodic mid-course corrections to ensure that companies learn from experiences and achieve even higher level of goals. An example of steer and adjust strategy is inventory management based on seasonal demand forecasting. It is also important that we challenge leaders in the credit union. Sense and respond. Every business may experience unexpected disruptions that interfere with normal business operations. For disruptions that are rare and unpredictable, companies can supplement traditional risk management processes with capacity to sense early warning signals and respond in a flexible manner. Adapt and transform. Gradual changes in the business environment eventually may erode in companies' competitive advantages. To adapt to such trends, many companies have turned to re-engineering and change management, although internal change is often difficult and true business transformation is rare, but necessary in times of crisis. Survive and flourish. This probably be said as don't just survive, but we want to flourish. And this is a big thing that, credit unions just don't want to get through the issue. They want to be able to, again, take advantage of the situation. Then we have employee and wellness resilience. What had happened, with the COVID, we've seen a completely change in the workforce. With a new normal comes several workforce considerations that will challenge credit unions to reinvent their workplace. Whether this is something temporary or more long-term, this will look different for all of us. Embracing differences and working to build a risk culture, inclusive workplace should be the heart of today's credit union business while we navigate the changing workforce. By leveraging different hybrid work arrangements, your credit union may have the ability to become stronger. Your employees' safety and well-being is a priority. For employees, the virus potential to rapidly spread through the workplace and in their homes, and understanding incited heightened levels of health-related anxieties and fear about returning to work. This, along with those who have children, are trying to find the balance between virtual schooling and work, whether in person, remotely, or hybrid work models. This has led to increase in what has been referred to as burnout or pandemic fatigue. Talking to your employees about work-life integration can also be helpful to find personalized solutions to allow employees to create separate time for home life and work. Remember that the psychological effects of hybrid work arrangements can include feeling of disconnect or isolation, can lead to depression. Communication, kept staff in the loop and showing appreciation can mitigate these feelings and make them feel included. Helping your employees reassess their work environment can also help them be more successful as part of your team. Focus on issues like data security, resources and controls, employment practices, employment well and safety. What we're finding now that with COVID, in a lot of companies, they had employees work remotely. And now that they are returning to work, have the ability to return to work, we have a lot of credit unions and businesses that will still have the employees, work at home. So it's really important that the credit unions, have a, good detailed, telecommuting policy. And it's very clearly, written and address a lot of areas. And safety, even at home, is a consideration, just like safety at the credit union. You're going to have, barriers at the credit union. You're going to have the 6 foot, distancing when you open up. You're going to have mask requirements. You're going to set up the break rooms differently. You're going to set up the telecounter, with you plexiglass. So there's a lot of different things that credit unions are doing, for the pandemic. But what they're doing is they're going to keep a lot of these things going forward. A lot of employees will still continue to work at home. We have a lot of credit unions, because of the talent shortage or branches being closed, having more ATMs and ITMs and drive-throughs. And now they're even developing walk-ups. So I was dealing with some credit unions that before the pandemic, they were looking to open up new locations, and they had a plan in place what they were going to do, and they completely shifted gears, what they're going to do with a new type of branch, because they see what could be happening. So there was a lot of changes, with COVID, and it's only short term, but also some long term, changes as well. So common insurance impacts, there's, the insurance plays a huge part in a disaster recovery or business continuity plan. So you really want to make sure that you talk to your insurance professional and make sure that you have the appropriate insurance in place, because the majority of the failures that happen in a disaster is lack of insurance or not adequate insurance. So when you talk to your account team, take a look at your replacement cost, extra expense, disaster length, and demand surge. When you have a disaster, things aren't readily available. So it's really important to know you're going to be paying a lot more for different items during a disaster. So you want to make sure that we have different worksheets out there, and your P&C specialist and your account team can help you with this. Another thing is loss of key personnel. That's another big thing that a lot of credit unions don't address in their, disaster recovery policy, business continuity policy, and there's different coverages you can get for that. So you want to review coverage and limits. I'm not a licensed person to go over any of these with you, but just kind of look at with your sales team, business replacement costs. Oftentimes over the years, you're not taking a look at what it really costs to replace your building. So you want to take a look at this more closely. And here are some things that would be included in the build and replacement cost. Business personal property, here are some things you want to address in your business personal property. Are you going around making sure that you have all your furniture and fixtures accounted for? Do you have a log that you account for everything that you have in the credit union? How about when you have employees now working at home, and a lot of them may have taken some of the desks or chairs or other equipment home with them? You have a log, keeping track of all this. And that's what we find a lot of credit unions, do not. Data processing equipment. Here are some samples of data processing equipment. Again, you always want to make sure that you're up to date with all this stuff. And you have earthquake, flood coverage, and extra expense. Again, extra expense is one of those things where when you have a disaster, everybody's bidding for the same security guards. Everybody needs a generator. So the cost is always going to be tremendously inflated for all of these items. An extra expense consideration, again, we do have a guide, and you can go in our Protection Resource Center, and we can send you this guide, and kind of helps you develop what your extra expense might be. Temporary locations, staff expenses, increased labor expenses. hot site expenses, and again, all these different things, and it will tell you how long would you anticipate a downtime, and it kind of gives you an idea how you can, calculate that. So success happens long before disaster strikes. So again, you want to anticipate, prepare, and rehearse. It is so critical, to have do the testing and actually rehearsing, and just how often you do it. It's not just a once a year thing. You should be looking, constantly and updating, these plans on a regular basis. What do you have in your plan? I mean, how many have active shooter in your plan currently? And we have a rash of active shooter incidents that are happening. So these are some things that you want to, put into your plan, and what type of training that you do, and what happens if there is an incident in your credit union. What do you do? How quickly will you open? What's the process if something like that were to happen? So always make sure that you are prepared and you rehearse. Again, test, practice, and update on a regular basis. It doesn't do you any good if things are out of date, and you're constantly updating the plan. And involving employees are really, volunteers and vendors are really critical. Do you take a look at your volunteers or your vendor policies or disaster recovery policies that they have? I mean, if you're relying on a vendor and your vendor doesn't do any disaster recovery or business continuity, planning, what's going to happen if there is a disaster and they're not available? So again, you want to analyze and review, their disaster plans, as well. Your volunteers, you have to have the buy-in. The board is ultimately responsible for this disaster recovery plan. So it's really important that, they have the buy-in from them. They are responsible. And again, involving your employees are really, critical, to the entire process. So it's everybody is really involved, in disaster recovery, and hopefully it will never happen. But if it does, you want to make sure that you are prepared. You address all the different scenarios that you can possibly think of, and go from there. And here are just some items here. If you need to reach out to the risk management area, you can just contact us. And here's some information there. And in our risk management area as well, we have a protection resource center, and it has loss prevention libraries, online risk assessment, webinars, and education. We have disaster recovery. We have all sorts of white papers in there with testing scenarios, and you can feel free to go there. Okay, and I can open it up to, questions.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was lots of information, and it sounds like CUNA Mutual has a great resource area for our credit unions to go to for, white papers or checklist for their disaster recovery.
Yeah, and it's all value-added service, and again, reviewing policies or procedures and stuff of that nature as well, and different things that credit unions may want to add, to their disaster recovery plan, such as active shooter, such as extortion, or stuff of that nature. We have all sorts of stuff, and I'll be more than happy to review that and help them develop, a plan in those areas that they can include in the disaster recovery plan.
Nice. Now, does anybody have any questions? I will say that COVID, I know, has changed the workplace environment, where before nobody was really working from home. You didn't hear that very often. And now it's like everyone that I talk to, everyone's working from home. And so you really have to change the way you think of things that, and you brought up some good topics there.
Yeah, the working at home is a big thing, and we've done a lot of work in that area, that credit unions, have a telecommuting, whether they have a telecommuting policy, and if they do have a telecommuting policy, does it address all the key items that you want to take a look at. And one of the things, you have safeguards in the credit union for the safety of the employees, but we have the same issues when employees work at home. There's a lot of issues
Yeah.
that go on as well that they should be looking at. But so we do a lot of work with the telecommuting policies for credit unions.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you. Well, I really appreciate your time. And like I said, it was very informative, and I'm sure people will be utilizing the information that CUNA Mutual has provided for them.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of your group.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone, for participating.